Good morning. It is January 22nd, 2017. I'm Alex Ansary. What I'm going to be doing is continuing my commentary on the archons. More specifically, I'm going to be doing a reading from a PDF. And the name of this PDF that I'm going to read is Archonic Agenda and Parasitic Dreaming. And I'm going to read it in its entirety without pausing to comment on the material. I am going to be reading 23 pages. So this is in the tradition of my Archon podcast series. In some videos, I'm giving you my material and I'm going on a rant and sometimes citing other works. And then, of course, there's certain podcasts, even the Gnostic Thought series, where I'm strictly reading Nag Hammadi or some particular writing from someone else. There's also a number of books that I have on the subject, including Psychic Protection. And so, as well as giving you my material, my own opinion, my own take on certain things like that in meditation and grounding, I'll also share with you what I believe is the best material from others. And so, I have one good friend out there that sends me material that she finds. She's also the person that wrote the PDFs that I read regarding Archangel Michael and the idea that a lot of these channels are in fact potentially channeling, more than likely, archonic, parasitic entities that are actually representing the false light. And so she has forwarded me some work, a PDF that someone else began to write. And what it looks like is, it's like their initial thoughts, the beginning of a book, and then pretty much the book ends with chapter 2. So this is basically some work that someone put out, and they chose to not put their name on this. And I noticed that there's a number of people that dabble with discussing the archons and the supernatural. They prefer, for whatever reason, to not put their name on it, perhaps to protect themselves. I know that, and I can testify, when you do this stuff with your birth name and you go on YouTube on a regular basis and you put yourself out there, you deal with the energetic backlash. But as I'm going to talk about in a future video, and I'll learn more about as I grow older, how to manage and mediate the energetic backlash. And so my last comments of this introduction before I get started, this is why I chose to go off the grid. It's a more grounding experience. I figure if you're going to be talking about stuff that's going to have an energetic backlash, you're going to have to eliminate particular areas of your life where the archons are able to come in and cause a disturbance. And so this is why I live this lifestyle outside this cabin that I'm living in now, where I'm doing this early morning podcast. I'm snowed in for multiple months. I've been snowed in for multiple months. It's going to be multiple months before the snow melts. I'm in one of the snowiest parts of Colorado, but it's also very healing for me to be here, to step back from the archonic influence over human consciousness. But I am not immune to the effects of the archonic infestation of, if you will, the alternative media and the internet. That very much can be seen every time we log on and we see where people's minds are at. So that is all with regards to my introduction. This is what I feel is valuable information. I haven't even read this. I can feel it. I've scanned it. Someone else has come to their own conclusions. So let us begin. Archonic Agenda and Parasitic Dreaming, page 1, and we will continue reading. The archons are parasitic entities which are intelligence-driven mind predators. They exist on multiple dimensions, and they're able to slip from one dimension to another within the lower frequencies of the 6th through the 1st dimensions. They do not solely exist on the 3rd dimension, though they can directly affect our reality, often unseen. They have infected all life forms in our galaxy to one degree or another. They are mind entities and operate on frequencies which affect the mind matrix of all beings in the galaxy. They can be thought of as intelligent, mind predatory entities. They do not have a form as such. But for those who have seen them manifest in 4th dimensional bodies, they often appear as black slugs-like entities. Black slug-like entities. They are a cloudy black mass of energy which moves in slithering movements which resemble large snake-like slugs. Healers and mediums are reporting seeing black, slimy, slug-like beings hanging around their homes of those having problems with astral entities, ghosts, and the deceased. The snake-like slug beings are also seen attached to people's auric fields, inserting their tentacles into the chakra points. The actual word used was tendrils, which I'm not familiar with. Tendrils. Feeding off the person's energy body. Just as leeches were used in medieval times to cleanse the body, these black leeches are feeding off the life force of an infected person. The host planets to these beings are within the constellation of Orion. This system is not their original home, but is one of the many systems which these beings have taken over and made into their host worlds. These archonic parasites inhabit hollowed out cave systems within planets, which they then inhabit to produce their offspring. In the center of the planet there is one large hydra-like being whose tendrils pass through all the labyrinth cave systems, feeding upon the negative fear energies created by humanoid beings imprisoned there. The beings feed upon lower fear frequencies, which they stimulate into being through mental torture. Humanoid beings from other systems in our galaxy have been captured by possessed reptilian and gray forces and are now held prisoner within the caves of these host worlds. Humanoid beings have the ability to create an emotional, energetic food which these archons feed upon. The archons prefer the negative, dark, polarized, energetic food which humans create when they are in intense fear and a constant state of anxiety. Once these archonic parasites have developed to a certain level, they have the ability to project themselves into other dimensions, like a writhing mass of slithering black snake-like slugs. They move into and through the lower levels. They search for beings with minds which can be directly affected to stimulate and create lower frequencies, emotional nourishment for them to feed off of. These parasitic beings influence humanoid beings to live in the illusion of separation. I just have to pause. There's so much here in this PDF which is aligning with my own language, and I didn't write this. The illusion of separation. I'm often using this term. Okay, I'm going to keep my commentary minimal. To keep them in the illusion of separation, fear, darkness, isolation, pain, suffering, and torture. Beings in these states create brain waves in which cause a reaction within the emotional bodies, which the archons then feed upon. The archons are totally cut off from the nourishing light and the love of the Creator, the universal dreamer. They are so cut off from the light and love that they need to feed off the energies created by other beings in order to survive. They infect the mind matrix of the possessed being, learning extremely quickly how the host's mind works, and very intelligently infiltrate it and begin to influence it from within the subconscious. Some beings are more prone to being possessed than others. Fallen reptilian forces, especially from the Alpha Draconis, known as the Draco, have been totally possessed by these parasitic entities. The Draco reptilians are aggressive in nature and produce massive amounts of hormonal, chemical, energetic substances within the brains and bodies which the archons can then feed upon. It is a symbiotic relationship. The archonic entity possesses the mind matrix of the Draco reptilian and stimulates its thinking into demonic, negative, dark thought processes, which directly influences the creation of hormonal, chemical, and energetic food within the reptilian body. The archon lives within the mind matrix of the host being. stimulated it into creating a reality which the archon can then live within and inhabit. The archons cannot create reality for themselves. They have since long severed their connection with the love and light of the universal dreamer, and therefore no longer have the ability to create. The ability to create comes directly from the creator of this universe. The archons no longer have this ability, and therefore can only copy the inspired thought of lower dimensional beings. They inhabit beings existing on the lower levels and cause them to use their divine inherited creative ability to create realities which run along the designs of the archonic agenda. I often use the term archonic, so this is just a matter of preference when you see people use archonic or archontic. Side note, these realities are especially dark and controlling, as it is within these kinds of realities beings are so easily led. The further into dark realities a being falls, the easier it is controlled and possessed by one of these parasitic archonic entities. They are especially tricky beings as they have the ability to slip in dimensions within the lower levels. They can mimic and shape into other forms, therefore deceiving beings into accepting their influence. Healers working on various dimensions have reported that these beings can operate on several levels at once and are intelligent enough to pass from one to another, often undetected. Often when we are battling demonic, often reptilian forces, we are not only battling actual reptilian beings existing on the fourth dimension, we are also battling against an archonic parasite which has possessed the reptilian being and is influencing its mind and behavior. The archons have created a distortion within the mind matrix of our galaxy, and all beings operating in the lower levels within are under their influence to one degree or another. However, some are more genetically predisposed to being possessed by an archonic parasite than others. The reptilian genetic makeup, which creates a reptilian mind matrix, is easily infiltrated by these archonic parasites. Many of the wars fought in our galaxy in past and present eons were first triggered, then nurtured into being by the archonic mind predators. The galactic wars created immense pain for the galaxy and all beings who live within it. The victims of these wars created massive amounts of emotional, energetic food for the swarming snake-like parasites. These negative energies not only nourished the archons, it also caused them to increase in numbers. Our whole galaxy is now infected. There are, of course, beings in our galaxy that operate on the higher levels who are not under the influence of these archonic entities. However, many of the races of negatively oriented beings within our galaxy, now affecting Earth and humanity, are directly possessed by these archons. Through the reptilian forces, the archons have imprisoned the human mind, encouraging humanity's victimization by other galactic beings. The energy of victimization which humanity is creating only sends a message out into the galaxy that they are open to being oppressed, and thus they attract negatively oriented beings such as the reptilians who wish to negatively influence mankind. The planet Earth and its human family are in a high state of archonic infection of epidemic proportions. As we look at our world and see massive amounts of negative realities being enacted on the world stage, we have to ask ourselves from where this negativity comes. The average person on the earth is of a loving heart, yet daily they act as if they have no heart, no mind, and no will of their own. They are infected by a archonic parasitic mind entity. The archonic infection is very difficult to diagnose as these entities are incredibly tricky and have the ability to directly affect our mind and can talk with a voice or words that you think are your own. That you think are your own. Hence the question, are your thoughts your own? These beings have the ability to look into the subconscious mind and use the language it finds there to communicate with the conscious mind, putting it directly under its influence. And I'm just butting in here. Things that you see in Hollywood rearranged in a dream sequence. So using imagery. This is really well written. Okay, it is possible to be completely possessed by these archonic parasites without having an idea of the infection. Someone who is possessed by these archons has chakra infections. The infestation orientates in one or more of the chakras. The solar plexus, which seems especially prone to infection, is often completely infested and controlled by these archonic parasites from within the chakra. The archon feeds off the energy of the chakra, causing it to distort and go off balance, thus sending the entire system into imbalance, which only opens it up to more parasitic infection. Or I also call it a domino effect. When it rains, it pours, etc., and so on. Most people are only infected in one chakra, though there are also people who are fully possessed. Often they are in positions of power upon the earth. Many of the atrocities acted out upon the world stage are archonic agendas in play. Have you ever wondered where those negative thought forms come from? You know that voice in your head which always puts you down. That puts others down. That causes you to judge yourself and others. Have you ever wondered why your negative thoughts are so much easier to think than those of a positive nature? Have you wondered why those negative thoughts trigger fear and worry, especially in your solar plexus? And how these feelings create heaviness in the body, which is so draining. This is a sign of archonic infection. And actually the word they used specifically was debilitating. Just got to pause and look at it from debilitating. Light workers are reporting being under archonic attack. It seems that the archons have moved on their agenda and are now actively attacking light workers on the planet. Brief pause from myself. I've steered away from using such terminology like light workers or star children or crystal children. However, there is decent material from others where they are choosing to use this language. So even though some people have co-opted some of these ideas, it may not mean that the ideas themselves are inherently false. And I remind myself of that in light of the disinformation in the New Age movement. It doesn't mean that there isn't such a thing as the real light workers on the planet that are here to do good. We may call them by different things, but some of us are really playing a role in this. Going back to the PDF. Light workers are reporting being under archonic attack. And it seems that the archons have moved on their agenda and are now actively attacking light workers on the planet. They have caused light workers to fall into consciousness, to fall in consciousness. The archons can stir up old, unresolved issues. If for some reason the archons cannot infect the light worker, they will manipulate another to act out this archonic agenda. Many light workers are reporting people blaming them for things they have not done, and other people are projecting their issues onto them. This can cause major confusion and distress for the light worker or the YouTuber, whatever, as they have to defend themselves from the accusations which comes from the projection of the other person. The archons will choose people who are the closest to you to steer you off your path. Often those people who you feel the closest to, the person you feel is part of your soul family, and the person you would never imagine would want to hurt you, suddenly turns on you for no rational reason, no real rational reason. Often when the damage is done, the archonic parasite will pass into another dimension. The person who has fallen under its possession has no memory of the blame game that they have been influenced to play. No memory. It is important to remember that the person blaming and judging you is under the influence of the archonic parasite. It is possible the archons will also possess many people around you, making you think that the problem must lie with you, as so many more people are turning against you. If the archon parasite can isolate the light worker from its fellow friends and family, then their work is successful. The higher up the ladder you climb, the more work you do on yourself. The lighter you become. The more open to this archonic attack you are prone. It is like moths to the flame. The archons can pick you out from the sea of the collective consciousness and can send their tendrils, again the word used in this PDF, tendrils, to attack you either directly through your own thoughts or through the negative thoughts of another. They can directly influence another person to attack you. Many light workers are under heavy attack from others right now, from people they once considered to be their close friends, or even other fellow light workers. Division causes blame, anger, and fear, which is delicious food to the archonic parasites. It is as if mankind is infected by an evil disease. People are acting out of character, and even your loved ones can become infected and act out an archonic agenda. My personal experience of these beings began many years ago while doing healing practices with my clients. I began to have people come to me with black, slimy-like tendrils inserted into their auric fields. And I saw bundles of these tendrils gathering in the center of the chakra, especially the solar plexus, the place of the ego. I worked on my clients with truth and light frequencies, which work very well for all other issues and problems. I was surprised to see that instead of healing the person, the light energy seemed to feed the archons, giving them more power. One client in particular stayed in my mind, and my client had come to me with depression and a constant fatigue. As I looked at her energy body, I saw several long, slimy tendrils, many gathered in her solar plexus. I tried to simply pull them out, however, I was unable. I called down the energy of her soul and aided her in breathing in the healing power of her soul, holding her in truth frequency. I was shocked to see these tendrils take on more power and form. I watched as they developed from being simple tendril forms to embryos. She was becoming even more infected. I did not know what to do. It seemed the higher the energy I called upon, the worse the situation became. I asked my soul which energy, which aspect could help in a tricky situation. The answer was Satan. As you can imagine, I was surprised to hear this. Before I go on with the story, I must tell you that I do not have the same judgments or fears around the being Satan as many in the New Age circles. For me, the satanic frequency is also part of creation and part of my overall multidimensional consciousness. With the permission of the client, together, we held the satanic frequency, encased the whole energy body in a black energy, which the satanic frequency enabled. The satanic black energy seemed to suffocate the archonic frequencies, and after over an hour of holding this frequency, my client was free of these archonic entities. Pausing, I've never once heard this perspective before. I guess there's like a Wicca crowd. I've always steered clear of some of this stuff. But I will continue reading the PDF, but just cite that as a disclaimer. And that we keep an open mind as we see a lot of decent information coming from this particular individual. And that's why I'm reading this full 23-page PDF. But oftentimes we come across things like that to where we are mystified and maybe even baffled and confused as to why an author may suggest a certain idea. Over the next few years, many more people came to me with these archonic entities. I gained almost no information about them and thus remained in ignorance. My next encounter with them was during a past life process in which I was taken through by a teacher within a seminar. I found myself inside a planet which was hollowed out. I was merged with the walls, and it was as if the walls had grown around me. I was a human, not necessarily from Earth, and there were more of us also trapped inside the walls. Makes you think, Han Solo, Star Wars, Return of the Jedi. Inserted into our chakric systems were dark black slimy tendrils which passed a black liquid into our bodies. It was as if we were being used as a recycling apparatus for this black liquid. I was in horror and had long given up the idea of any rescue or freedom from this nightmare reality. I remote viewed the entity which resided in the center of the planet, who was the owner of the black tendrils, and it looked like a huge black slimy hydra slug-like being, like a huge black octopus, feeding and excreting its waste directly into our bodies. As I left this past life memory, I asked, where am I? I was told, in a planet in Orion, orbiting the star of Rigel, Rigel. From this time, I had more and more encounters with these archonic parasites. Many people shifted their energy in front of me, becoming cold, angry, hostile, and positively evil. I'm going to just pause. A lot of my own story regarding becoming aware of the archons is describing it with the same kind of language. Shifting their energy, not literally becoming shapeshifters, like human to reptilian, but their energy becoming cold, angry, hostile, accusatory, psychic attack, things of that nature. I've even seen like a lot of wild personality changes in people that consume content on this channel and comment, indicating archonic infestation and attempts to kind of cord me up, get me in a weird conversation, and then I'll just pick up on the fact that they're trying to get involved in emotional vampirism. And like if you don't respond to their comments or whatever, you'll notice people come and go, but some people just simply land up on a channel just to start getting some dialogue to then just start doing some attacking. And I've noticed this, like the different people keep coming and going from you, the audience base, but that energy seems to keep coming through the listenership. It's rotating people, and it's done this for years. And I really just had to share my own personal commentary as I read this PDF for the first time. I feel less alone. And then I can actually remember periods in which someone that I identified to be an emotional vampire who wanted me to be attracted to her for a reason, the why she gave me that sensual hug. And I kept wondering why there was such an addiction to her aura and that sense after she hugged me for that minute. And I felt such a close connection. And I realized that hugs may feel good for a reason, but people that have these entities that are centering around their solar plex, when you go body to body and you connect your solar plex and it feels like love, that could really be a sensation that is being induced in you, that euphoric sensation. And in reality, something parasitic could be taking place to give you, as Eve Lorgan calls it in her work, the love bite. This is some of the most amazing material that I've read in the entirety of my life in the alternative media. And I want to pass that message on to the person that sent this to me. And I am going to recommend that those of you that are listening send me other content that you think is worthy of sharing in this whole books on tape, Alex Yancey style, with a little bit of my commentary. But I have to apologize and say I cannot read this and not stop to go, wow, as we just take in this material. So it's a unique delivery. And the fact that we're pausing from this, and I need to actually take a breath and go, this is so deep. Finding where we left off. Many of these people would act out of character, being mean and horrible to both themselves and others. I saw a gray, cloudy light pass over the eyes, and sometimes I would even see the eye color change. The person would suddenly act out of character, blaming, judging, and accusing all people around them. Many of them were in positions of power in one form or another. They had the ability to hold other people to ransom, and through the archonic infection, were able to affect other people too. I saw the archonic infestation spreading from people's auric fields to attach to other people, bringing these people to anger and fear. And I'm going to just take a brief pause. You might want to visualize yourself being grounded as you go through this material, as I certainly need to be in that state of consciousness to deliver it because one could argue that the material is very ungrounding. And you want to go away from fear as you start going, holy shit, this is some really deep material. Because you want to go deeper into the awareness. You want to go deeper into the idea. You want to tap into your own epiphanies and that light going off in your consciousness as I read to you. There will be people, places, and things that are going to come to your memory. Again, I want you to become aware of that. The great thing about this isn't on the radio. You can pause this, you can download this, and you can come back to this material. And the sharing of this material is really activating your memories and activating your higher self and your awareness to see the archonic or archontic, depending on how you choose to call it. Like I said, I say archonic, the archonic influence in your life, or the source of the psychic attacks, if you're intuitive enough, and to realize and to have a consciousness capable of pattern recognition, to where you see certain people acting normal, and then you see a period in time, and I've often talked about the solar flares and solar cycles, but a period in time in which things get strange, and then you see a rise in this archontic or archonic shifts in people's energy. And going back to the PDF, the person would act out of character, blaming, judging, and accusing all people around them. A position of power, one form or another. Hold other people to ransom, and through archonic infection, we're able to affect other people too. I saw the archonic infestation spreading from people's auric fields to attach to other people, bringing those people to anger and fear. This fed the archonic parasite, and thus more and more people were becoming infected. Fear is their most preferred food. When we are afraid, we leak our power, and thus we become easy food for these vampiric archonic entities. At first I thought they were not as intelligent, as I was mistaken to think of them as simple astral parasites. However, the more encounters I had with them, I began to realize that they were intelligent, and the more they infested humankind, mankind, womankind, the more intelligent they became. They were feeding off mankind's ability to have imagination and creative abilities. Very much, by the way, depicted in Dark City, the movie. They did not seem to have imagination themselves, but had the ability to trigger and steer the creative imagination powers of the human for their agenda, which was complete domination. And look at what they have today with technology, social media. I began to see them turn up inside other people's bodies. I began to have encounters with those who were fully possessed. There seemed to be a big difference between someone who was simply infected to one who had a full-blown possession of a archontic entity. The archontic entity is not really fully formed when it first infects its host. It can even stay dormant for years before some rising of the frequency awakens it. Once certain energy triggers its awakening, it can feed off energy which is broadcast from our DNA and begin a gestation process, which results in an embryo parasite developing in the solar plexus. The parasite can go on to inhabit all the chakras, but seems to start its takeover process from within the ego center in the solar plexus. From within the solar plexus, the archonic entity begins to control the lower mind, the rational mind. It does not dwell in the conscious mind, but burrows itself in the subconscious. From the place of the subconscious, it can trigger issues, unresolved trauma, and negative mind patterns, which are damaging to both the host and all those around them. The archonic parasite can influence all the thoughts of the host, and the host has no awareness that these thoughts are not their own, and they are under the influence of an entity, and will instead blame all around them. I often see those who are hosts to these parasites accuse others for for things they are doing themselves. They will blame other people for negative emotions, thoughts, and opinions they actually hold themselves. They are caught in a mirroring game which they cannot get out of. When you interact with a person who is under an intense archonic episode, you will notice that they think everyone around them is operating in their egos and has negative intentions. They will throw out accusations which surprise those that they accuse. They cannot see past their own projections and think everyone else but they are at fault. It can become very tricky, as this archonic episode can affect others around them. It can become infectious. Those people around them who have issues, who are similar going on with their egos, will also become triggered. And they are then open in those moments of judgment to becoming infected by the archon parasite themselves. Once the archonic parasite has gained enough food from the negative emotions, it'll pass back into the subconscious and remain hidden. The hosted person will go from acting mean 1 minute to having no awareness of what just occurred. No awareness. No memory. What did I do? I didn't do that. It is not clean cut. It is hard to stay objective while in a archonic drama. It is easy to be pulled into the drama yourself. Once in the disempowering influence of your ego, you are food for their game. It was not until my recent ayahuasca ceremony that I realized that I too was infected. During an ayahuasca trip, I began to have intense negative thoughts and an incredible feeling of depression and fatigue. I realized that I had been feeling this on and on for several months. I tried to process out these negative thoughts and feelings, but it seemed elusive, like I could not hold it long enough to be able to heal it out. During the ceremony, this became so highlighted that it was unbearable. So as the trip went on, I looked over my shoulder to see a black slug upon my back. With help of the shaman, I was able to remove the slug. With this, a rush of recovery, or energy, rocketed up my spine. My negative thoughts were gone, and joy entered my heart once more. This experience gave me more of an understanding of these archonic entities. I think I needed to go through this experience so that I could more fully understand why these entities, what they were, and how to deal with them. I later met a powerful psychic who reported seeing vast underground nests of these archonic parasites underneath many major cities, especially under hospitals and prisons. I've had a number of interesting encounters with women in the past that worked often at hospitals and in conjunction with military law enforcement universities. People have come and gone, always suspected something else was going on in some of these environments, especially college universities. So I pause. And going back to the PDF, it seemed that they were congregating around places where humans were living under stressful and negative conditions. Under stressful and negative conditions. And I look at my own sense to heal myself from what I believe is my own the attacks on my person, and leaving major cities becoming uninhabitable for me because it feels like I've become increasingly on the radar in recent years, where I literally need to be in my own space, to where I'm literally not in their stronghold. So going back to the PDF, researchers of the archons have stated that the archons are the reptilians and the greys. This is incorrect. The reptilians and the greys have become possessed and no longer have any free will, and are completely living out a archonic agenda and placing us all in a energetic prison to become food for their archonic or archon overloads. Overlords. Archon overlords. Archons, by the way, meaning authority in Greek, or authorities, or rulers. It seems that the fall of many of the races in our galaxy were caused by this archonic parasitic energy. Where did these archons come from originally? The story goes on that a race of humanoid beings created an artificial wormhole, or Stargate, one could say, wormhole, in the outer skin of our universe, creating a tear in our fabric of our universe, allowing the infection of these archonic entities to come into the universe. The archons seem to be living in the void space in between universes, and on the creation of the wormhole, they swarmed into our reality. I saw this process in my mind's eye. I could see the universe as an egg of light in a sea of darkness of the void. A hole appeared in the outer skin of the egg, and the light from our universe triggered something to occur in the void. It created a swarm of these negative archonic entities to then enter our reality. This parasitic entity at first was not really that intelligent, but it had the urge to survive, and it felt threatened, as if it was out of place and was concerned about its food supply. So it went looking for food which would nourish it. It found mind. The archons began to hang out around those beings who were also programmed to survive, and thus they found the ancient races of the reptilians. Because of their genetics, the reptilians came very easily under the archonic influence. After time, they possessed the reptilian races, and thus they fell in consciousness. The reptilian races have been under the influence and possession of these archonic entities for thousands of years. It seems that the falling of many races within our galaxy all have been caused, to one degree or another, by this archonic infection. An archonic infection begins by the parasite lowering your vibration to lock you into an astral plane. There, you are much more easily influenced and controlled. They can achieve this through many methods. Drugs, alcohol, and pharmaceuticals can be used by the archons to infiltrate the free will of people. In this state, the possessing entity can then drain the energy directly from the solar plexus. Anyone trying to rid themselves of a archonic infection will be brought very quickly to paranoia and anger toward other people. It is reported that meth addicts and heroin users often see these archonic parasites as demons around them. The archons can merge their distorted vibration with ours and increase the negativity of our emotional and mental attitudes. I just want to go in and it says reported meth addicts and heroin users. LSD can also be something that wakes people up to the dark grid. And I have an LSD experience to where I no longer wanted to embark on a certain type of path. After my 2000 experience with it, I felt like I could see the evil and violence around a particular individual that was very influential to me as a young man. And my trip showed me aspects of, I didn't know the term archonic, but that's exactly what it was. It was like this dude was connected with this like dark grid, and I never perceived something like that before, but it happened in that experience. So I just want to add that in. Going back now to the PDF, we're on page 7 of 23. The archons can merge their distorted vibration with ours and increase the negativity of our emotional and mental attitudes. This is a process of deconstructive interference. One side comment from me. I believe that the archons, when they're using people that engage in violence, they can make them physically powerful and host on their body. And the power can almost seem supernatural. The amount of violence that they can do to others. And it only lasts as long as they're serving the archons. When that power goes away, there's that parasitic eating away at their physical body for playing host to them. And so men that have done a lot of wrong to others, organized crime, or be it police, they have major physical ailments later in life, I believe intuitively, because of their connection with the archons. They're serving of them, and the fact they got some of their strength through artificial and unnatural means, which is also why this also dovetails with steroid use and human growth hormone. Okay. Going back to the PDF, this is a process of deconstructive interference. They set up a distortion in our mental body, which is directly affecting our thoughts, causing us to spiral down in energy to lower and lower thought processes. From this state, we are easily led and programmed by the main parasite, by the mind parasite. We begin to believe these thoughts are our own, and then empower them, and thus create the reality the archonic entity wishes us to manifest. They are responsible for the thoughts of the artificial matrix in which we live. We are living in an archonic nightmare brought about through our own creative powers. There is a quote now that the author is citing from a website that says, quote, etheric archon grid. As I was discussing dark grid, they're using the terminology etheric archon grid is present in a thin layer that extends literally 8.6 miles upward into the sky from the surface profile of our planet, and also 8.6 miles downward from the surface profile into the Earth's crust. So side note for me, people talk about meditating, connecting with the heavens, breaking through the dark grid and grounding to the center of the earth. That would be breaking through that. I've never heard of this, a specific 8.7, but I've always felt a sense of resistance in meditation with above and below. And it really is about being a conduit and literally breaking through. Just check out my other video on YouTube regarding thoughts on meditation done in the last month. And that'll be very enlightening to you after that statement that I just read. Going back to the PDF, I have not only seen this archonic grid, but I have also passed through it many times on various dimensional journeys and astral travels that I have been on. It appears to me as a shattered piece of glass reflecting a distorted illusionary matrix, which, if you get caught up in it, it can be extremely disorienting. It is only a narrow band of energy, but it is powerful enough to wipe the memory clean, causing lost memory of dimensional journeys. I talk a lot about this barrier in my soul readings. It was set around the planet, trapping souls in an artificial incarnation cycle. Or the term that I use in a lot of my past videos, incarnation time wheel. But I see how similar this is to this unknown author. I have watched how souls came to the earth with full aware and sentient consciousness, with the full instructions of their missions fresh in their minds, only to pass through this barrier and forget most, if not all, of the memory of their true identity. This barrier not only traps souls in false matrix and incarnation cycle, it also perverts and distorts access to the true soul records. I noticed the more and more I passed through the barrier, the more conscious I became, until I was able to bring the vibratory resonance of the higher version of the multidimensional self through the distortion into my 3D reality and anchor it into my body. This seemed to open me up, and I gained more access to soul records of not only myself, but others too. I did these dimensional journeys over and over again, retrieving a little more information. Since the galactic alignment of 2012, the galactic center has been pulsing highly charged streams of energy into our local space, and this is causing holes to appear in this barrier, and therefore more information is getting through, making my soul readings easier. Other people are waking up faster and faster, accessing high-end information, which is accessing or advancing the awakening. Brief comment from me to you. I have looked at the other side of this, that this has actually increased the archonic infection as portals are opening, because my reporting of increased archonic behavior in people seems to pick up around 09, 010, 11, and that is in line at the beginning of the last solar cycle of now we're just going into a minimum. So I have come to associate solar maximums and minimums portals with periods in which there's more and less archonic activity, associating solar maximums with increased activity because of electromagnetic energy being increased, and that being a band in which archonic entities happen to live. Doesn't mean that that band is evil per se. It means like a band of travel or a conduit. Going back to the PDF. The effects of passing through the barrier was known to us before we came to Earth. We had been briefed on its influence, but until we actually experienced it firsthand, we cannot have prepared ourselves for such an experience. The reason is because it puts you into an artificial level of consciousness as you pass through the barrier or filter. It acts as a filter, filtering out important information and energy about who you are on the higher energy levels, and important information which may help the planet and raise our collective consciousness. It locks us in the left brain hemisphere, the rational mind. Within the rational mind or left hemisphere, there are encoded belief systems which get downloaded automatically into it as we pass through the barrier. These belief systems are fundamental control mechanisms which are inserted into the matrix of our mind, which governs the rational mind as electrical impulses. Electrical impulses being interpreted by your mind. The grid is made up of etherical, vibratory, distorted mind concepts. As we pass through the barrier, these are automatically inserted, and we wake up in incarnation often with no memory of who we really are. School and education systems are all designed along an archonic agenda, and therefore through indoctrination and even blatant programming, we are encouraged to operate only in left brain isolation. This leaves many of us paralyzed in the concepts of Mr. Rational. I noticed that when I was above this grid, if you like, I was fully aware of who I was on the higher levels. However, the moment I passed through the barrier, I would only for a brief moment lose consciousness. When I regained consciousness a second later, it was inside the matrix or grid. I can no longer feel the truth of who I am on the higher levels, and negative and self-defeating thoughts would once again come into my mind. Because I made this journey over and over again, I got very familiar with this passing through the grid until I was able to bring back with me more of an awareness of my multidimensional identity, which was much more grander than my imprisoned ego, which this barrier seems to be able to slam me back into in a second. Over time, the holes in the grid became larger, and I found not only was I able to retrieve more of my own personal information, but I brought back more important information for others. And again, pause, brief note from Alex. Chemtrails blocking out the sun, trying to prevent those holes from opening, I speculate. The sun really being something that helps us. It may be something that also creates that additional electromagnetic energies, which archons also use, but we can also use the sun ourselves for many positive spiritual purposes and applications, and is playing a big role in the shift. And so there's a reason why they chemtrail. And the rabbit hole goes deeper than what a lot of people have assumed. Going back to the PDF. The only problem with blasting holes in an archonic net is that the net is somehow aware of you and can be alerted to the presence of a person who is retrieving soul records, raising its frequency, or becoming a danger to the archonic agenda. There are automatic alarm systems, if you like, within our matrix. And I've seen these in operation many times. At first, I thought I was under some sort of paranormal psychic attacks from God knows what. However, the more experience I had of these attacks, the more I came to realize that they were not coming from an artificial or an actual being or person, but they were built-in safety systems built into the matrix to alert it to anyone who was getting above their station. Ringing in the ears, especially the left, can be an indication of a matrix auto system of control, suddenly forgetting in mid-sentence what you're talking about or thinking about, usually when it's been either high information or some sort of discovery or conspiracy. I gotta butt in. This has happened to me. You've seen it happen to me on YouTube Live, where I'm talking about something. I felt that something was jamming when I was doing live shows even, but I never knew who would understand this. I mean, I've never really even articulated all this stuff at once in writing, like the way this person is articulating this. In short, there's a reason why I do less live shows and I do more pre-recorded shows. I'm also very now aware of how we can forget what we're talking about when we're onto something. This person is indicating some sort of cybernetic, archonic, automatic reaction system. We got someone that can see. We got someone that's retrieving their soul. We've got someone that's blasting through our dark grid. Let us assess their threat level. Going back to the PDF. The phone would ring, disturbing a channeling session or inspiring conversation with a fellow dimension traveler, stopping the flow of important information and taking us completely off track. Often the person on the other end would have no idea why they called, some convinced I had called them. Lights would flicker and cold rushes of energy would come into the room. It would be easy to look at these astral entities or ghosts, but every time I realized none of this happened when I was not in an environment with electricity. Wow. I remember my husband giving me a suspicious look when I told him they can listen through all electrical appliances and use the whole of the electric grid to listen on us both audio, clairvoyantly, and energetically. Yet there's a reason why I live off grid. And these technological devices can still be gateways for surveillance, and I've seen them go on the glitch and things break within days. Especially when I was trying to write my life story. In this last month, I saw like massive problems with my electronics, but I'm also less dependent on all of this, and most of the time the internet's off, meaning this constant, all you can use internet going back and forth, the Facebook page being on, that portal is not open, the Stargate, the internet Stargate, the conduit energy between myself and these archonic beings has been much more limited by going off grid and having less energy. I'm online less. I need to keep this in mind as we go back into the summertime to not be online all the time, or not just let the internet be on unless I'm using it for a purpose. The reason is I believe it's a conduit. Going back to the PDF. And the writer, obviously, I can now tell for the first time that it's female. As the author of the PDF writes, I remember my husband giving me a suspicious look when I told him they can listen through all electrical appliances and use the whole of the electric grid to listen in on us both audio, clairvoyantly, and energetically. I try to engage with the beings behind the attacks, and that is when I realized that these were not beings but an automatic alarm and attack system set up in the Matrix, preventing anyone from awakening. Of course, they did not stop me, and the more awake I became, the more attacks I got. I just got to add in, could this also include automatic attacks on the body or thought forms to make you think that you discussing certain things, especially in a public forum, that you're bringing the attention on yourself and you better back off, otherwise you might get chipped. And I think they have directed this fear at me, and I'm not convinced they have the right to chip me, to be straight up with you. And I think that we need to hold back even some of the predictive programming that we get from Hollywood, because some of that stuff might be there to fuck us up, to see them as a threat or powerful. They might be a threat, but to see them as very powerful and abilities to punish us, or to see certain aliens as benevolent. Going back to the PDF, reading that last sentence again. Of course, they did not stop me, and the more awake I became, the more attacks I got. Just note this is opposite of what the New Age movement tells you, folks. They see people are doing bad things to attract those attacks. It's the opposite. And this PDF is like confirming so much of my information, but giving it so much more detail and color, but dovetailing things. And I think some of you are noticing that in a very eerie way. What does this mean? We're getting our information from the collective consciousness. It is a truth that is internal. And we find PDFs like this that echo the same things that we're talking. It's a very magical thing. It's a very magical, powerful moment for me today. She goes on, back to the PDF. I was triggering alarms all over the place. And I swear I know that I've done this with my solar flare research and warnings about World War III and China 2025 and America's future and how unique that is. But it sends off an alarm. Of course, I could be wrong. But from what I can tell, there's a lot of things that I put out there that has triggered alarms all over the place. And this is why we have to maintain ourselves spiritually. It's for these very reasons. She writes, my computer would do the strangest things, especially when I was trying to upload my articles on my website, especially about the Zeta, or as some call them, the Greys. It was as if there was intelligence within the computer that could tamper with my work. And I know it sounds paranoid and a bit out there, but it was intelligent. I firmly believe that there is an AI, intelligent machine, at the heart of the creation of the false matrix in which we live. It can use all electrical appliances, wires, phone masts, and even the geometric structure of the electric pylons helps hold this artificial matrix together. I thought fiber optics was also going to be thrown there, but you might as well. I always said that if we had a big solar flare, wow, oh my God, I'm just holding, she writes, I always said that if we had a big solar flare to knock out the power, people would wake up. We are being held prisoner in this matrix by not only the electricity itself, but the way the electrical grid is geometrically and magnetically set up across the planet. The electrical grid is not randomly built across the planet. It is designed along occult geometry, which binds energies and creates artificial realities. Here we have ley lines. And my commentary about Portland, people being kind of, they're getting the love move to this ley line city during the solar maximum as the portals open. Come, come, children of the corn. I mean crystal children. So I started noticing all this false light worship and false goddess stuff. And you'll just have to see my Portlandia commentary series on YouTube for more. Going back to the PDF, I began getting strange emails when I uploaded my book, We Are Here, talking about the Zeta. There would be a paragraph in my text, and then underneath it was text about things I did not understand. There were words of governmental agencies and projects such as echelon. I had no clue about such things, and so thought nothing about them. However, they kept coming, so I tried to reply and ask the person what they wanted. However, the email would never deliver. I always got a failed delivery notice. A friend of mine came to visit who was a hacker and was also very knowledgeable about the Illuminati and the New World Order. So I showed them to him, and he told me that Echelon was a secret government spying surveillance system, spying on the internet and reading people's emails. It was an automatic system searching for keywords, looking for people who would be considered a danger to national security. What words in my text about the Zeta triggered this Echelon system? I do not know why, but it obviously saw it as some sort of threat. My friend put a ping on the email address and told me they were coming from the White House. Of course, I didn't believe him. Some months later, I went to upload a redesigned version of my website, something I had worked on for months. As we uploaded the website, my hacker friend noticed that there was information coming back down the line, something unusual about that. After I had finished uploading it, I went online to look at it, and it was not there. I reopened the website building software to discover it had vanished. My friend saw I was distraught and said not to worry, he could retrieve it from DOS. He went white when he tried and said there was no evidence or sign of my website even being on my computer. They wiped it clean. It took me several more months before I could finally upload it. However, by this time I had discovered how to combat these interferences from the Matrix, which obviously had such things as Echelon part of their control structure. I'll pause. I had issues in the past with computers, more so in Portland, and even an intuitive sense that I was writing about the future Chinese threat and the Singapore Air Force Base in Idaho, and I felt like it had created, and even Hal Turner being an FBI informant and other things, and I felt like almost my computer was given a kill switch. But what she's talking about is potentially far more deeper. And what if there is something very sensitive regarding talking about the Zetas or certain things that Echelon or other surveillance programs would activate and then respond in their own way, in an automatic type of way to the keywords, in a similar way to where YouTube has a way that it's responding to actual keywords and material, copyrighted material. Is there a way that they can actually scan and actually listen in all the words? Actually, there might be, to where there's a database actually picking up on everything that I'm saying right now. AI actually going, okay, well, actually, there's a closed caption option, which the same friend that sent me this PDF, she also said, hey, on YouTube, you can actually see an automatic, like, voice recognition, to the best of its ability, I guess, spitting out the words. So if that's the case, yes, everything that I'm saying is also going back into the beast in a loophole manner. Wow. Pinch myself. Going back to the PDF. Not only were they capable of entering and messing around with my computer, but also my online passwords were changed. No one worked the day after the problem with my disappearing website. I felt it was a warning signal telling me they can screw with my life if they wanted to. The more I worked on myself, the more light or truth vibration I got into my body, the worse the attacks became. The worst times were in airports. Oh, wow. Do I have a lot of empathy for that one. By this time, I had begun to travel running seminars around soul integration and talking to people about my alien encounters. It seemed that the electromagnetic smog, which is always heavy in these places, was increasing the effect of the matrix. I often say the unnatural electromagnetic pollution as opposed to the natural. Another reason cities I consider to be not habitable to someone as sensitive to me, especially during solar maximum, with solar minimums being the exception of the rule, where I found myself much more able to function in this world. So I'm going to be putting out a lot of content through the rest of this solar minimum period because I see how it traditionally works well with me, with solar maximum being a period where there seems to be more of these attacks. And again, I'm just giving you my 2 cents as we go deeper into this rabbit hole, going back to the PDF. It seems that the electromagnetic smog, which is always heavy in these places, was increasing the effect of the matrix. I felt like I was being fried electrically. My skin would prickle, and I would hear many high-pitched tones in my left ear and feel dizzy. As far as me and the tones, I don't know whether I distinguish left or right, per se. I just pick up on it and have learned how to shield and turn my aura into a mirror. And within 5 seconds, I have found myself turning the tone off completely by turning my aura into a mirror and sending that tone back where it came from. And it seems to come from space. Going back to the PDF. Often airport staff would act strange around me and behave oddly. That time I went to LA in America was the most scary time for me. I was followed by 2 men and had my photograph taken many times when I walked the street, and had someone outside the house where I was staying watching me. I wanted to believe I had lost my mind and I was just being paranoid, but other people confirmed that the men were indeed following me. I have written more in detail about this in my other articles. A brief pause when I left Mark Passio's Free Your Mind conference, where I gave my 1-hour lecture on solar flares and their effect on human consciousness and cycles of world wars, Earth changes, and other changes in the solar system. I went through the scanner in Philadelphia, but was also patted down, and it was like being tortured because I already submitted, if you will, to being scanned, and then that triggered something else, either in my aura or something. These people were acting like evil demons. They were like acting like I had, shouldn't have an issue with that. It's like after you go through the machine, then why get the secondary pat down? There's no reason why the machine should be acting like there's something suspicious in my body, unless this machine is alien technology and it's able to actually see the souls that are the real, as one might call them, a real light being, a real light being. And it's as if this technology, the scanners in the airports, are picking up on that and other technologies. Going back to the PDF. Back home, it all came to a head. I felt under attack. I was scared, jumpy, and constantly had this interference ringing in my ears. I asked my soul for help and was told that I could not get out of the matrix, as I could not leave the earth. However, I could scramble my signal and be undetected by the matrix. My soul taught me how to spin my aura like a revolving door. Wow. I remote viewed the place where the surveillance was coming from, and I clearly saw a black, plastic, shiny-looking pyramid somewhere in America. It was surrounded by neatly cut grass, so I knew for sure it was on Earth. It looked just like a government installation. Even though I did not know what it meant at the time, I had the letters NSA in my head when I asked where I was. Inside the black pyramid, wow! Like a black cube type black hole, sun. Inside the black pyramid were many levels of offices, storerooms with computers, massive computer, powerful computers. I saw a man at a console looking at points of light on a map, which I intuitively knew were people like me, people who were waking up. As I spanned my aura to scramble my signal, the man said, "She's still here, but I cannot find her." I knew I had been successful. Then another man entered the room and said, "She's here all right, I can feel her, she's spying on us." I left that place rather quickly and had no idea someone could know when someone is remote viewing them, and this was unnerving. This stopped all the strangeness until years later I went to live in Munich, Germany. Many strange things happened there too, too many to go into now. It was from the Bavarian Illuminati inviting me to lunch. Now, maybe it was someone playing a joke on me, but as I had not really talked to anyone about my experiences and no longer had contact with my hacker friend who could think to do such a thing, I rushed home and was glad to be out of Munich. What if that really was the Bavarian Illuminati? What on earth did they want from me? I thought it all had to do with the Zeta, but since learning about them and how they look for people with certain genetics for ritual, certain people with red hair and blue eyes, I am not so sure the alien thing was all they were interested in. Pause. I've identified the same type of bloodlines. I've also had strange former girlfriends come out of the woodwork that have matched this description, that have caused a disturbance that I suspect now may have had some archonic or alien interference in their life. I've also been told in the past that there were government forces remote viewing myself, and I've never disclosed this yet to my audience, but it came from someone that did a clearing on me, and he said that there was an aspect of the government that was keeping tabs on the things that I was saying, and that it was a man, and that there was remote viewing or psychic technology being used. And this is something that I also feel drawn to talk about, to speculate about. What are they doing underground? Are there any human-alien hybrid programs? Are they going after, in particular, certain types of women? Are they going to use the World War III scenario with China to capture many of these blood types for off-world programs and cloning and things of that nature? Going back to the PDF, and by the way, we're on page 11 of 23, and I'm continuing on here. It is only recently that I've put together all my strange and weird encounters and experiences as regards this archon energy. I have come to realize that they have been following me around for many years. It seemed that they could not only affect me on a very 3D level, They also had access to me on the 4th level, astral planes. Of course, I had strange dreams, too many to mention. However, this was not only in the way the Archon energy was trying to infiltrate my life. The first time I saw what I now know as a Archonic takeover or full possession way back in 1990. She started out using the word archontic, now she's using archonic later in her report. So I'm just noting that. A friend of mine had a strange experience at a standing stone circle here in Cornwall, a place I later found out that Crowley had performed a black magic ritual. She was meditating there with a group of people from Munich, the home of the opening speech of Hitler. She felt like she had been taken over by something and had collapsed on the ground. From that day, she began to change. She would be fine when we were with other people, but as soon as we were alone, she would morph in front of my eyes. Her eyes would turn this awful, cold, gray color, even though they were usually a bright blue. She would talk in a low-toned voice, and she was mean. First time I'm hearing about the blue eyes shifting to a dark color, but actually, no, I've heard about this before. David Icke talked about meeting the Prime Minister and said his eyes went black. And so the idea is of the eyes changing. Some people talk about, Paul Joseph Watson and others that have gone from exposing things to joining the dark side. And I found myself looking at this real shifting thing going on in the eyes of Paul Joseph Watson as he marginalizes Middle Eastern immigrants, all as racist. I mean, I see the dark alien agenda there, and behind the white genocide hysteria meme. But I talk about that more in other videos, going back to the PDF. She would talk in a lower toned voice, and she was mean, and she would change from a wonderful, lighthearted person to one that was out of character and manipulative and mean. Over the period of 3 years, she manipulated every crystal, book, sacred object that she could get her hands on. Just a moment. She did not steal them, so I had no way of blaming her, as I gave them freely to her. But when she was out of my company, I felt abused, deeply abused, not only because she had taken my crystals, but because she had taken over my mind and had manipulated my free will. This scared the heck out of me. This scared the hell out of me. I began to think that she is possessed. Soon I came to this idea. All hell broke out. I could hear her speaking to me constantly in my head, and she often confirmed that it was going on. Soon, as she was alone with me, she would be able to repeat word for word what she had said to me in my mind the day before. She began to take everything from me. She began to tell friends that I had lost my mind, and for a while they believed her. That was until one friend began to visit her at her new flat. You see, to everyone else, she was sweet, and the Archon remained hidden. It wanted me to think that I had lost my mind and isolate me from my friends. He was shocked to the core as he came back and told me that her flat looked exactly like mine. She had bought or stolen from me everything. Cushions, towels, pictures, everything. He said it was the creepiest thing he had ever seen. Once he woke up, he began to see her change too. And finally, I had someone to talk to. The situation got worse and worse, but I could not throw her out. If I was in her company, I was her mind-controlled slave. One day, she came to my house and knocked on the door. Now, usually, she would just open it and invite herself in. This time, it was different. My soul said to me, remember the vampire films? When she asked me if she could come in, I replied, not likely. No, you cannot. She turned a very bright red. She was furious. Her eyes were almost black, and she ran from my door. 2 hours later, her mother came to see me to tell me she had been taken into a mental hospital. She had left my door and taken all her clothes off, ran naked around the village, broke into a farmer's house, climbed into his chest freezer, and remained there until the farmer called an ambulance. Her 2-year-old boy was found in a stream with crosses painted on his body with lipstick. Her mother and I talked for a long time, and I said that she was trying to be like me, and she replied, no, she wanted to be you. Those words made me shudder. Side note, you see an increase in the stories of people being shot by the police while running around naked. You saw the face-eating thing of 2012. There's a big joke about bath salts. Came out in the autopsy, the guy wasn't on bath salts. Also, little girls talking to Slender Man. There's an increase in what I'm suggesting in others in this archonic invasion of human consciousness. Now going back to the PDF. I put all this down to some sort of demonic possession, but could not shake the feeling that this being was only using her to get at me. And I'm going to talk about my own stories in my own book that very much parallel this type of stuff. Going back to the PDF. The next time I encountered it again was while I stayed with a German family while living in South Bavaria. I was staying with them for a while before getting my own flat. We all got on super well, or that is what I thought. Then the man began to change at the dinner table and talked to me very badly. His eyes changed from deep brown to a steely gray. I recognized this demonic entity again as the same one who had possessed my friend. This would occur over and over, but once the demon had his say, the man's eyes would change back to brown, and he would act as if nothing had been said. No memory. Memory wiped. What me worry? It was enough to make anyone think that they were losing their mind. I was relieved to leave that place, even though I now know it was most definitely not the individual people, but a demonic, archonic force working through them. Since that time, I can spot it a mile off, and it did not freak me out anymore, as I seem more able to avert its influence. So, the author here, this PDF, just got the awareness of it. She was learning to deal with it instead of giving it power or being afraid. But instead coming from a place of strength and understanding its strategy and feeling that she could see it a mile away. A feeling that I also sense. So you could sense that archonic influence a mile away or within certain people, certain crowds. So we follow our sixth sense, our intuition. We steer away from those that we detect are archonically influenced. Going back to the PDF. In my experience, there are different levels of archon. It's as if they have a growing phase and morph and change into different forms, shades of gray, as I also put it. The one who has followed me around seemed quite intelligent, though others appear only in their early stages of development. I have since come to think that the archon following me around is the same entity which was part of my abduction experience early in Belgium while running a seminar. You can read all about this in my new book, The Navigators of the Abzu. So that's whoever is the author of this PDF, The Navigators of the Abzu, A-B-Z-U. It appeared as a black entity with a shadow body with red devilish eyes. It was definitely not reptilian. Maybe it was what other people called the shadow being. Sounds corny, but it appeared to me as if it was a black devil with red eyes. There were occult and satanic symbols being flashed into my mind as if he was trying to perform a magic ritual on me to control my now unruly will. He had overcome me once before with occult magic and torture. I gave a woman a healing session while running a seminar in Austria, again in a place known to Hitler. She looked like an ordinary housewife, complaining of being too tired, so I began working with her and realized that she had a dead girl attached to her. I asked her if she knew who this might be, and she replied it was her daughter and that she had died a year ago. So I began working on helping the removal of this girl and taking it on another dimension to carry on its journey. All of a sudden the room span and I almost faded, and I realized I was being lied to. This was no girl. I called in more truth vibration and asked to see the truth, and I saw a reptilian being that is actually an aspect of her oversoul, which wished her to remove her fear of him. So I got to work on this, and again the room spins, and I wanted to faint. I realized again I'm being fooled. What on earth is going on? I asked to see the truth and wished I never did. The woman was sitting with her eyes closed. She had no idea where I was. And as I was feeling so awful, I was pacing around her. Every time I sent her the truth frequency, she would put her hand to my face. She would put the flat of her palm against my palm or face. Palm against the face. Face palm. It was the most freaky thing to experience. I kept thinking, next, I know she will turn green and her head will spin around, like in the movie The Exorcist. I managed to remove this being, which was now making her make strange throat sounds and cracking her neck back and forth. However, when she left the house, pleased and happy, she was healed, this being jumped into me. All of a sudden, I was no longer in the room. I was in a dungeon during the times of the Inquisition. I was strapped to a wooden board and I was having my legs crushed and pulled by this torture contraption. My torturer was a Catholic priest, and he had the same gray eyes. How long I was in this altered state, I do not know, but the next thing I knew, I heard myself praying for my soul. As my friends who have now come to my aid were trying to pull me out of it. They found me on my knees in the corner of the room with my hands in prayer, begging to be killed to save my sinning soul. All of these encounters with this being hardened me up to make me strong and able to recognize this archonic infection. I began to find ways of not being infected myself, or so I thought. Like I said earlier, there seem to be various levels in this archonic entity, or to this archonic entities. I think the guy who was hanging around me was quite high up in the hierarchy, though I encountered others who were not so. I attended a seminar run by a good friend of mine. She too was a healer of the transformation process I teach now. She announced the group of 30 people that after lunch she would take one person through a process which would be the hardest process she had ever done, would be the hardest process they would ever witness, and the most terrifying person having the session would experience. Soon as I heard this, I knew she meant me. After lunch, I sat on a chair in the center of the room with everyone looking at me in some fear, and I closed my eyes and I heard my friend said, "Aloha," or Aloya, a name, was taken when she was 3 years old, and I heard nothing more. I was no longer in the room. I was merged into the walls of a black cave in a hollowed out planet somewhere in the Orion. Inserted into my body, into all the points of the chakras, were these black tentacles, which were owned by this huge black octopus creature, which lived at the planet's center. This being was not only eating our light body, feeding off us, but the worst thing, it was also excreting its excrement into our bodies. It was the most awful and disgusting experience that I ever had, and it took a ton of healing to bring me back, and I was a mess for some time after. Soon after this experience, I began to see them and other people. People were infected by these black slug, snake-like creatures. They infected the person through the solar plexus and eventually would host inside each of the chakras, hoping for full possession. Actually, as I speak through this stuff, I hold my heart chakra. Sometimes my hands are in a state of prayer. Sometimes I interlace the knuckles. And so different hand formations, the last one's kind of hard to describe, can help strengthen the mind when reading difficult things or going through difficult things in our lives. Going back to the PDF as I switch my hand position. I tried working to remove them in the same way I normally would work with light frequencies, only to discover that it made it worse. The light seemed to feed them more. I ended up working in the black energy and holding people in the void energy to suffocate and eventually get these black slugs to leave the body. People were depressed, tired of having a feeling of hopelessness, being off track, and some were suicidal. once the parasitic slug had been removed, they would increase in energy almost overnight. You would think, with all this experience, that I would have recognized that if I was infected myself, or that I was infected myself. But that is how these entities work. They are able to stay in disguise as the person themselves. Many people think it's their own thoughts, which they think those thoughts. They think it is their nature, which is depressed. And all the time, they are under archonic influence. For about a year, I had been feeling hopeless. My joy was hard to find, and it was constantly tired. I felt constantly tired. I had thoughts that my work was no good. I was not doing well as in my mission, in my mind, and I was somehow letting the universe down. Dramatic, I know. It was not until I went to an ayahuasca ceremony that I realized this was archonic influence and I was infected. I took ayahuasca, but nothing happened. This really triggered me, and I began a roller coaster of negative thoughts and feelings, and I thought that it would be my only chance to take ayahuasca, and it was not so strong enough, and did not work. Others around me were also complaining that nothing happened. I began to think that maybe I'd been ripped off. This negative headspace became so loud that I began to think that it was really me. It was then that I saw a huge, big black slug on my back. I can see how it was sucking my light somehow. It was draining my life force. I freaked out, and luckily the shaman recognized my distress and came to my aid. Once removed, I felt my kundalini activate, and I felt so much more energized, and my joy returned. I think like martial arts practice, by the way, a side note, some say yoga. For me, I just say stretching. Very important to grounding and maybe releasing certain things. I stopped smoking weed for a week, and I stretched, and I felt like I was releasing some sort of entity that was hijacking on my upper back. I think these things come and go, and it's part of being human, unfortunately. Just a side note from me to you. And we're at different levels in our lives of being able to deal with this interference. But a lot of it deals with our ability to ground ourselves, clear our chakras, and she's using the terminology kundalini. And I haven't really used that in particular, but I guess that's what it is, cosmic and earth energy and grounding. And then, of course, there are many meditations you can learn about with regards to cleaning your energy, clearing your energy, unblocking your chakras. Going back to the PDF. From that day on, people are coming at me all the time to talk to me about the archons, and I'm helping others remove them, but I am not always successful. It seems that the light is not the way to go. Much better to work with black obsidian. Is a stone that works well to make sure you're not reinfected. Oh my Lord. Of all the things that I have not lost in my life, a black obsidian stone I've had for like over 10 years. And it's like one of the only stones that I have, and I've actually veered away from things like orgonite and regular crystals, which seem to be conduits in some cases for archonic or alien influence. But this black obsidian, reading this PDF is really important, and it's like, why has that object not been lost by me? All the cars I've owned, all the places I've lived, it seems to have a positive connection with me. Going back to the PDF. People are saying to me that we should send them love, and yes, we should, but not until they are safely removed. If you simply choose to love them without fully removing them, you will simply be reinfected. I must say that the more I can see them, the more I think we are all infected to one degree or another. Are these entities dark plasma beings? And now she's citing from something that she took from Dapla.org, DAPLA.org. Quote, the latest WMAP results shows that more than 95% of the universe is composed of invisible, non-baryonic dark matter and energy. Composition of our universe. The matter that is visible and currently measurable is composed of particles that have been identified to the physicist in the Standard Model. However, the majority of scientists now believe that ordinary matter makes up less than 5% of the universe. In fact, it makes up less than 20% of all matter in the universe. The other, more than 80%, is comprised of invisible matter that has been dubbed dark matter by scientists. Dark plasma theory argues that this dark matter is present around our solar system, and specifically the Earth. Evidence shows that the Sun and the solar system are under the gravitational influence of invisible dark matter in our galaxy. Dark matter particles have been raining down on Earth every day and night for the past 4.6 billion years. These particles are captured by the Earth's gravitational field. Furthermore, the embryonic solar system also contains dark matter components. There are therefore many reasons to infer that there are low-density halos of dark matter particles interpenetrating the Earth, effectively creating currently invisible counterpart Earths that co-rotate and share the same gravitational field as the visible Earth. The theory questioned in 2007 if the density of dark matter around Earth was underestimated. Computations in 2008 by Stephen Adler of Princeton University and Zhu and Siegel from the University of Arizona suggest that dark matter density in the solar system and around the Earth extends or exceeds the galactic halo density significantly and is much higher than previously thought. According to J. Alfred's estimate, the visible Earth is gravitationally coupled to a Jupiter-sized dark matter halo. As dark matter clumped, it created conditions for a dark biosphere to form. This dark biosphere gave rise to dark matter life forms and consciousness. This theory argues that dark matter is largely in the form of plasmas of exotic particles, including supersymmetric particles. It has been shown in lab experiments over the past 10 years that minimal ordinary plasma cell systems can be generated in the lab. The theory therefore suggests that minimal dark plasma cell systems were generated within this dark halo biosphere in the early Earth and predicts the existence of terrestrial dark plasma life forms which evolved from these minimal plasma cell systems. Furthermore, unlike chemical-based life forms, dark plasma life forms are compatible with life in a super-symmetric universe. Life forms would be as varied in scale, structure, and intelligence as carbon-based life forms, as different as a microbe from a whale, a mosquito from a tiger, a giraffe from a crocodile, an ant from a human. The degrees of intelligence and awareness were as different as a centipede's awareness to the awareness and intelligence of Homo sapiens. The entities that we have loosely identified as ghosts, angels, jinn, demon, deities, for example, the Martian apparitions in the atmosphere, aliens, biological UFOs, fairies, and sightings of the recently deceased on the surface of the Earth, are characteristics of this predicted exotic plasma life forms from interpenetrating dark plasma spheres or counterpart Earths. They constitute ecology of plasma life forms that evolved throughout Earth's history and sometimes formed symbiotic relationships with the carbon-based life forms that we are more familiar with. Homo sapiens evolved carbon-based bodies that formed symbiotic relationships with some of these plasma life forms, indicating a type of symbiogenesis. When the carbon-based bodies died, the bioplasma bodies resulting from the symbiosis continue their existence in the counterpart Earths. The universe is made up of what we can see, and it looks like now we're going back to her writings and we're done with this quotation. The universe is made up of what we can see, what emits light, and what we cannot. I've got one that can see. That was irresistible. I can. What emits light and what we cannot in the plasma of the universe. If you look through a telescope, you will see large light filaments called Birkeland currents riding like snakes throughout the universe. Maybe that's a typo. Maybe she meant to say wriggling like snakes throughout the universe. Actually, I have seen these large light filaments. And you can basically see those in the corner of your eye as well sometimes. These serpents are basically electrical discharges causing a magnetic reaction in the plasma field, causing the light filaments to twist and braid, becoming the silver serpents. Now, they are telling us that there are the same structures within the dark plasma that we cannot see. We know that all dimensions and portals, stargates and realities of the light were created by the movement of the serpents. Now we are coming to understand that the dark plasma also folds and creates planes of existence, star systems, planets, beings, etc. Through listening to Ananda Hari read all about Ananda in her book, The Navigators of the Abzu, A-B-Z-U, and she leaves here a free to download link. I'm going to have the PDF that I'm reading available for you at alexandria.tv through some link, so look for that later on in the next day or so after this goes live. Or I'll just link directly to where it came. So she writes that we have come to know that in the movement of the serpents and their electrical discharge, they created folds within the plasma caused by the creation of magnetic waves. What if worlds, dimensions, and beings were also created within the folds of the magnetic waves of the dark plasma field? How would an entity in a very rudimentary form look like in this dark plasma universe? Would it not take on the snake-like appearance? They appear in several forms depending on the level of intelligence, and I've seen them as black orbs, blobs if you will. I've seen slugs and creatures like worms, especially in people's bodies. I've seen larger snakes and nests of serpents, hydra and octopus-looking creatures. It occurred to me that they had some sort of gestation period, as I have seen the way in which they develop, starting as a blob, then forming into a slug, then worm, snake, hydra, and octopus. It looks like the stages of simple-celled life form mutations. I have remote viewed nests of these creatures underneath prisons, military bases, and hospitals, all places where people would be in a negative headspace. And I think Portland, Oregon, and the underground fits that mold as well. A different underground than, say, deep underground bases, but an underground where people were shanghaied, kidnapped, brutalized by prostitutes and bouncers, crimps. There's a whole story of the Portland underworld, and I've told that story from another perspective of basically how that underworld energy is affecting the people on top. And that is my way of saying very much in what she's saying when she says this statement: I have viewed nests of these creatures underneath prisons, military bases, and hospitals, all places where people would be in a negative headspace. Continuing on. Are these archons coming from the dark plasma universe? As Ananda Hari sent a beam of life through the 9th dimension into the 8th to draw a template of light upon the lower dimensions to create life, did she also trigger the animation of the dark plasma, just like Sophia in the Gnosis, the Nagamati scriptures? Sophia is an aeon. She is one of many gods and goddesses of the sacred foam. In the myth, or mythos, she injects through the skin of the egg of the pleroma, that's right, the pleroma, a light template, which happened to be the human template in the story, or that which became cloned. I think bigger, I think this is the template enabled lower animal life forms to evolve to eventually become humanoid races within our galaxy. As she did this, she became so fascinated by the living light template that she formed that she got pulled from the pleroma and found herself in the field of matter. Her presence in a place she should not be. It sounds like someone being sucked into a video game that they're playing. Her presence in a place she should not be. There's actually been books depicting such a plot of being sucked into a video game. Her presence in a place she should not be caused the matter to become animated. Her creative presence alone caused the dark plasma to become alive. She then watched as the dark plasma, like a swarm, began to fight against itself. She gave it a part of herself, her intelligence. She gave it the ability to self-regulate, and it began to form worlds. These entities then went on a rampage and became the tyrannical empire of the archons. And this is Stargate SG-1, really what the ghoul represents, for those that have seen it. It represents what she's talking about. And I'm also going to upload a lecture given in Europe, I believe in Germany. It sounds like it's done by a German. And he's talking about the black goo and AI. And he's not necessarily saying the archons, but he's talking about the same thing. So I'm going to be uploading that lecture. Going back to the PDF, the black slugs that I am seeing in people's bodies are eating their light. They're attacking light workers the most and eating their light bodies. What if the same process is going on a galactic level and there are large serpents eating light systems? Now we know the universe is prone to eating itself and having black holes which do exactly that. These processes are going on a macro and micro scale. The worms or slugs which enter our bodies enter them through the black hole in the center of our chakras. They then infect the person, and over time they grow into slugs, hoping to take over the person entirely and eat their light body. There are also larger beings that are entering galaxies and solar systems through the black holes in the centers to enter the system and consume the light. Now I know this all sounds very scary, but if you look at it just as the dynamic workings of the universe imploding and eating itself, just like the serpent eating its own tail, you will calm down a little. People assign personalities and characters to these beings, but I do not think that this is incorrect. I think that there are many beings in the galaxy that have fallen prey to their infection. I think the reptilians, greys, are not archons. They are, however, fully infected, and are hosts, some of them willingly, to these archonic parasites. And now this person actually talks about Stargate. In the film Stargate, Apophis is a host to the snake creature, which controls his mind and body. Do these beings enter through black holes in our reality? It is said that people at the Hadron Collider are trying to open a black hole between this universe and a parallel reality. Are they opening portals to allow archonic entry into our reality? And I'm going to pause and say, I am calling it as well. It's something is being opened up in the 2020s. In conjunction with this World War III stage-managed event, Chinese troops in America, missing humans, opening up stargates or portals, and Elon Musk and this whole trip to off-world bases, and telling many people that are young today that they're going to be going off-planet around 2022, 2023. What is it with getting people to go off-planet with the potential of them trying to open up a stargate or a black hole for the return of something while they stage a war that will cause much pain and misery and suffering that the archonic entities would be feeding on? Now, if you want to work with me at expanding on this theory, comment in the section, find my email, find a way to contact me, and verbalize that you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth, especially with regards to solar flares, World War III, and stargates. Contact me soon and share with me the information that you're seeing. And it was only one of you listeners that said you noted that there was some sort of a astrological event, big time, coming up 2022, 2023. And then I saw an article saying that two stars are about to collide in 2022. On a side note, in conjunction with their other theories, and projections about the next solar cycle being big. And in Stargate, they used a solar flare to time travel. They needed the energy because the Stargate they needed, one of the episodes, was not hooked up to any grid. So they found a way to connect the solar flare and the subsequent geomagnetic storm, or CME, impacting that planet with the activation of a physical Stargate. Now going back to the PDF. So why do they go after the light workers the most, people who are actively working on increasing the light in their auric field? J. Alfred may have the answer. Quote, recent scientific papers at the end of 2008 which studied acceleration anomalies in spacecrafts and satellites orbiting the Earth and a more detailed calculation of dark matter density in the solar system and around the Earth also points to the possible existence of blobs of dark matter in our atmosphere. Within the context of dark plasma theory, this point to dark plasma blobs within the Earth environment. By the way, I took some pictures in Dallas, Texas in 2012 that I felt that I needed to take pictures of the sky after a geomagnetic storm, and I'm going to make a separate video about that, showing you that these pictures seem to look like matrixy types of entities grabbing energy with their hands, or things that looked like hands that seemed to be concentrating energy or collecting energy, and then other things that looked like it was collecting energy, like something out of the matrix forming in the red sky, like the dark marks and lining in the red sky. Let me go back to this quote, but just a lot of things are connecting for me in this early morning. But how we really defeat these beings in the end, or protect ourselves, is still an ongoing work in process that I think I am investigating, this woman's investigating, and we're seeing different results. And I'm interjecting into this conversation that we might see different results during different parts of the solar cycle or different years and times, based on the amount of different entities that we're fighting, dealing with, that are here on the planet. Going back to this quote she's citing, to understand how they interact with ordinary matter, the dark ionization process had to be understood. Interactions between ordinary and dark matter bodies are generally collisionless, i.e. they can pass through each other. Firstly, this is because the lower density of particles, and secondly, because their dark matter particles do not interact with ordinary electromagnetic forces within an atom. Hence, generally, dark matter particles of a dark matter object can pass through the large spaces within ordinary matter's atoms easily and without causing any effects. However, plasma bodies possess a plasma frequency which is caused by the natural oscillations of the particles within the plasma beam. Again, oscillations, solar flares, plasma, electromagnetic energy. Going back to the quote, if the particle oscillations within the dark plasma is high, the probability of collisions between dark matter particles in the plasma and the particles in ordinary matter atoms increase. When the dark plasma life form focuses, this also happens during meditation or other mental focusing activities. When the dark plasma life form focuses on a target area, the density of dark matter particles in that area increases. What you focus on increases. Okay. This results in an increase in the frequency of oscillations within the dark plasma and a rise in the collision rate. When dark matter particles collide with ordinary matter atoms, some electrons may be displaced to generate an electric rent. Other electrons may jump to concurrence, higher energy states, then fall back to lower energy levels, emanating ordinary photons. In ordinary circumstances, there will be ultra-weak photon emissions. However, when the plasma life form focuses on a target area, the intensity of photon emissions in that area will increase. Ordinary light of different colors and other electromagnetic radiation, including microwaves, will be generated. Besides light, the ordinary plasma also generates heat. Thermical waves that are generated by the dark ionization process also heat up biological tissues. Thermoelastic waves of acoustic pressure are generated when microwaves heat up soft tissues in the head. These waves travel by bone conduction to the inner ear to cause buzzing and other sounds that can be heard only inside the head and not by others who are not oriented in a similar way. Furthermore, the natural oscillations of dark matter particles in the dark plasma cause collisions with ordinary particles in a periodic fashion, resulting in the density of the ordinary plasma to increase and decrease cyclically. Another term I use often, cyclical, generating a pulsating electromagnetic field. The predominant frequencies generated by the temporary ordinary plasma will be low, mostly in the microwave region, but would also include radio waves and infrared waves on either side. Occasionally, it'll be high enough to be detected at visible wavelengths, and more rarely extending beyond this into the ultraviolet region. The light curve generated by the temporary ordinary plasma of a dark plasma form would span the frequencies over a particular time frame. A microwave glow is predicted before the visual detection, and also a microwave afterglow subsequent to the visual detection. In other words, a visual sighting of a plasma life form or a biological UFO can be predicted by first detecting the microwave glow, then tracking its evolution. If the frequency continually increases, a visual sighting is likely to occur. You know, that sense of something being just outside your line of vision, which occurred to me half a paragraph ago as I continue to read. These slug-like archon entities are often seen with a glow around the edge of their form. Is the glow described above? I talk about the violet light too. There was a New Age group, by the way, as I finish this quote now, that was talking about visualizing violet light, and someone that was claiming to channel Saint Germain, the other things that I consider disinformation, really a front for the archons. We see this link here with violet light and purple. I'm just taking note of this. Not to demonize the colors in the spectrum, but to notice that those are like the channeling colors or conduit colors, it seems. It almost seems verified by that last quote. So going back to the PDF, she writes, and we're only a few pages left. The archons are low vibrating thought forms, empowered by our own creative mind abilities. In a strange way, they give us the opportunity to choose what we're creating, what we are thinking, by aligning with archonic thought patterns or aligning with our own inner knowing or our own soul's wisdom. They require emotional energy to sustain themselves. Mankind has long been their primary food source. They feed upon energies that are in resonance with their own vibrations, negative emotions, psychological suffering, i.e. feeding on those that suffer. They engage in lower vibrations. They thrive off influencing us to influence, or rather ignorance, suffering, and ego perversion. They use us against ourselves. They can read us and use our own dormant negative tendencies to cause us to become locked in negative thought forms, which enables us to be fed upon by these archonic entities. They seem to work hand in hand with the matrix of control. The relationship that we have with the matrix only feeds them more. So how do we know if we are infected? Here are some symptoms that I've noticed. Partial infection. Do you suddenly feel like it has come from nowhere? One minute you are energized and the next minute you feel like you could easily crawl into your bed? Do you suddenly feel heavy or have a dense feeling of worry, especially in the solar plexus? Do you suddenly have very negative thoughts about yourself, which pulls you into a deep depression? Do you get easily pulled into doubt, especially when you have meditated on higher energies or are having a special or joyful experience guided by your soul? Do you feel hopeless, as if everything that you do is futile, especially those of you working in a light worker profession, like your work is no good? I just want to say, for those of us on YouTube, we're never really officially referred to as light workers. We're just conspiracy theorists. But there are people that don't come with these titles for themselves that are doing serious work that have put them on the radar. And they don't get the credit from the population. The reason why they're doing it, in my opinion, is their own soul. We're here to set ourselves free and share this knowledge that we have within, however we accrued it. Return to the PDF. Do you feel hopeless, as if everything you do is futile? Okay, again, especially if you are working in a light worker profession. Do you start questioning yourself and your abilities? Do you start analyzing yourself as if you are a cold and ruthless psychiatrist? Yes. Do you feel like giving up? Do you feel suicidal at times? Do you have old issues in which you thought you had healed resurface all the time? Full-blown infection. Do you think someone is psychically attacking you? Do you feel a bad feeling in the solar plexus? Do you look for the person attacking you? Do you judge your friends for the attacks? Do those that say they're being gang stalked by government employees? I believe those are the ones with a full-blown infection. I've seen a lot of rude people, audience members, tell me that, I'm doing a disservice by talking about the archons, that I should get on board this idea that 50 to 100 people have been assigned to them. And they don't realize that this is full-blown infection. That's why I have certain people that are, and I just felt the sensation in the back of my skull as I said this. There are people that are listening, there's some of you that are listening to this, that falsely believe that you're being gang stalked. You have an archonic infection and you become a fan of the work of Alex Yancey. And I've actually seen some of your messages. There was one guy, if you're listening, sir, that was a sign of your infection. When you sent me a screenshot of your cell phone and said, this question seems really, really strange. Do you know what this question means? And like the cell phone service or something, do you like the layout of the screen? Are you happy with the service? And he's like indicating like the government's out to get me. So I'll notice people that have been infected by the archons will attempt to pass their infection to me, to tell me that there's something weird going on, or there's weird stuff going on their cell phone, or people are asking weird questions about my channel, or, one time there was a man saying, well, Alex, I was watching porn one night and this pop-up came up and it said, Alex is calling you. He lives 19 miles away. Alex is calling you. And it's like some Alexis porn star fake, someone's calling you, pop-ups that might pop up when someone's watching porn at a certain website. Pop-ups do pop up on certain websites, whether it's porn or not. And so I've seen those with full-blown archonic infection ask me if I was calling them through some sort of internet device, and I'm explaining to them that it was a porno pop-up. Okay, let's just go back to this. Do you see everyone in their ego when all the time you're in yours? Do you become angry, arrogant towards other people who are standing in the light of their soul, yet you see it as in their being in their ego? Notice how I have a lot of haters. Notice how a lot of people subscribe to this channel that are infected with archons, that thumb down, that watch the channel, subscribe just to thumb down. And they see me as, I'm being self-serving in my own ego, and yet they're angry with me for putting out this content. Have you become at least aware there's an audience base, that this is actually the deeper archonic infection of the haters, that they're haters because of something going on inside their own psyche? And why, if they hate certain content, would they watch that content over and over? Unless they had some sort of an infection, but a part of them on a subconscious level that actually wants to be set free. That's why they're coming back for more. They're sending negative energy by being a conduit for this dark matter, or the archons sending anger and hatred at yours truly for speaking this stuff out. But there's also another part of them that's trying to grab at whatever bit of data they can to help them improve their life or their world or their psychology. So in a way, they have multiple personalities or spirits. They like the content, now they hate the content. They hate the content, now they like the content. They're infected. They're infected. And there are few that can even contend, in my opinion, with this level of dialogue on YouTube and take on the energy backlash. I'm going to do a future video how to deal with energy backlash. Some of the things that I'm learning. But I'll tell you what, moving forward with more information when they're hitting you is the way to go. To move forward and not let the archonic entities have the upper hand. To not pay attention to the people that send messages going, oh, you're fucking crazy. You're talking about the archons. Help me, Alex. I'm suffering from the archons. I've actually gotten like messages from listeners, like random people with fake profiles taunting me because I talk about these things. And I'm letting the audience know that this energy is there and I'm not backing down to it. And I'm going to try to set an example for some of you to not back down to this. Once you start awakening, heaven forbid, you start speaking about it as well. Then you'll really deal with it. Other things that this author has brought up with regards to full-blown infection in the form of questions. Do you think that your spiritual path is the only correct one? Do you feel empowered to chastise others for walking another path? Do you psychoanalyze and blame others for things you're doing yourself? Do you step other people's boundaries and insist telling them all that's wrong with them when you have not been given permission to do so? Do you think that you have to save everyone from themselves, not honoring that they know their own way for themselves? And I'm going to pop in and say, there's a lot of people that have gotten on board this. Everybody needs to wake up, and they need to realize everybody has free will. We're here to wake ourselves up to the next level. You're not going to see everybody wake up. And so that type of even hope and obsession seem to keep people under control of these emotional energy parasites. PDF goes on, are you part of a spiritually minded group and feel that you're better than they are? Are you always picking out one person in the group to isolate them? Oh, extreme control freak psychopath behavior. Are you often instrumental in the collapsing of intimate groups? Do you blame everyone but yourself? Imagining all sorts of wrongdoings. Oh, that person voted for Clinton. Oh, that person's a libtard. That weird guy, Nikki Bravo on YouTube, was trolling me saying, I can't believe a libtard has 10,000 subscribers. It's like just full on, any way they can attack me for being an independent thinker. And yet this person was talking about having his own archonic infection in another video. Like, I really understand what you're talking about, Alex. I think what you're talking about, and then see them flip out on me. To then see them flip out, lose their shit on me. Like I did something to them, as if something has infected them with a psychosis that I'm out to get them. Going back to the PDF. Signs of someone around you being infected and actively living the archonic agenda to get at you. Often, when we are free of this influence ourselves, they will choose someone close to us to do their bidding for them. Signs of someone around you being infected. Questions. Are you suddenly under personal attacks from someone who you consider close to your heart? Does that person suddenly turn on you and accuse you of things that you simply did not do or do not do? Are you suddenly blamed for all sorts of imagining misdemeanors? Are you suddenly under the influence of a hate campaign? Do you suddenly find yourself isolated from your fans or friends? I was almost as if that question was posed to me. Yeah, yes, I do. Do you suddenly find yourself isolated from your friends or like-minded individuals? Yes, but again, that's tied in with going off grid to pull back from that electrical energy. And I had a dream, by the way, that the electric grid was full of these very angry spirits from the ancient world. Okay, continuing back to the PDF. Now, I know everyone at some point or another has experienced this, and I am not saying that every time this happens, it's an archon infection. However, if you are actively working on yourself, increasing your light, or trying to expose the negative force in one area or another, you may come under an archonic attack. These beings are tricky and will even use New Age ideas against you. They will trigger others who are infected to judge you in the name of the New Age movement. Oh, this is really good material. We are taught by these ideas that to look at the negativity is somehow feeding it. Yes, they call someone negative, though, and don't see the hypocrisy there. She writes, I can understand where this comes from and agree with it to a point. The Archonic entities love this because under this New Age idea, they can hide from detection. I had one friend who, looking back, was very obviously infected. She had read lots and lots about not judging other people. I've also heard it said, don't wish harm upon other people, because that can really hurt yourself. You look at all these people, wanting harm upon immigrants and others. Now I'm starting to become less afraid of looking at how things really work, because it's like, yeah, they could put the fear of attack in us. In reality, the people that are going to be experiencing the most danger are the ones that are the most engaged in these negative thought forms. So keep your thought forms positive. Going back to the PDF, especially with regards to other people. Be loving. So she talks about, I had one friend who was obviously infected. She had read lots about not judging other people. She became very holier than thou, though, and she spent her whole time chastising people for being judgmental. Often, the other people were not being judgmental, and we were only expressing what had been observed going on around them. She became a hard person to be around, and I remember one day she ranted at me about being judgmental when I simply expressed my dislike for cooked carrots. It's like the most reading that I've done out loud, like ever, or in a long time. So as we approach the finishing line, and my day is starting here at about 9 o'clock in the morning. It was only then that I realized she was a little crazy, and that if anyone there was being judgmental, it was her. She became like a New Age thought policewoman, and people began to avoid her because she would jump on people and start blaming them and judging them for supposedly judging. Other people were not in judgment, but were simply exposing a negative force, such as the shadow world government. And I noticed that if I talked about the Illuminati, the New World Order agenda, which is well documented, she would explode in rage and judgment against me for supposedly judging the perpetrators. So when I talk about my life in Portland, I'm pretty much trying to articulate a very troubling period of my life where I felt very judged and hated by the Portland society for a lot of my research. And anything that went conspiracy, spiritual, or discussing the archons for things on a deeper level, or World War III, I was accused of wanting to make it happen. And for years I've been grieving about this sense of judgment. And now I'm realizing that I just experienced in my own world what these other people that are waking up to the Archonic agenda have been experiencing in their world, going back to the PDF. If we lose our ability to see light from dark because of a New Age idea that we should not judge, then the archons have most definitely won. There is a big difference between judgment and discernment. So with all that said, how on earth do we deal with this infection? As I said, there is no good fighting them or falling into fear of them, as this only feeds them. Light does not work either, so I have noticed they are actively going after light workers. Instead, working with the light-dark frequency of obsidian works much better to starve them from your body. I have noticed that sound seems to have an effect on bringing them to the surface. I have noticed that during shamanic healing, the use of the rattle brings them to the surface. Remind me to download some good music then. Rattle, huh? So far, the things that help with the infection are working with the black light. Imagine that your whole body and aura is now black, and imagine that it's so black that it's shiny. And once you've achieved this, that you may notice you feel sick. Often you may want to gag. A strange, slimy feeling arises in your throat. It seems that the solar plex in the throat, or the places in the body which reacts most to the infection, allow the energetic vomiting. I have never had anyone actually physically throw up, but they urge and gag as if they are going to throw up. Allow yourself to make noise and express this infection in sound, growl, scream, and groan, and make noises like an animal. Make any sound that you can to get this parasite out of your body. Shaking the body also helps get these parasites up and out, like a dog would shake to get rid of fleas. So I've talked about martial arts, body movements, even slapping the bodies and even slapping the heart chakra, qigong movements back and forth, waist twists. That's to show about shaking the body. Okay, so dancing. And then the other thing is, it's the first time I heard about imagine yourself in black, but I have felt the protective attributes of wearing black. And I remember that my mother, that was very much involved in both the New Age movement and verbal abuse. And like everything was opposite, basically, what the truth was with her. She was trying to forbid me from wearing black. And as I was not able to find anything accurate, and she was predictively programming me to see black as evil, my question to the audience that can hear the sound of my voice, do you agree with this author? Or do you see maybe black clothing as something that might be protective, not just a goth thing, but something that is not inherently evil? I'm curious your thoughts. 3 more paragraphs, folks, and then we're done. Please listen to my podcast regarding thoughts on meditation after this. And please put yourself in a meditative state of being. But understand that I'm still working out certain things, and I will read someone's article at great length, but I don't think that we should succumb to fear that if we're grounding our body with energies or colors that we're feeding the archons. And it sounds like the author here has developed an opinion of it being just black light or black color. And I'm letting you know I'm not sold on that, and maybe a few other things that she said. But 95 to 99% of the material in this PDF was very, very good and very, very helpful. And now we will read the last 3 paragraphs. And the tone in my left side particularly, has just begun. A tone in my left side. And now it's subsiding. Many light workers do not like working with the dark light as they have ideas that it's negative and evil. This is the biggest trick that the archons have played upon us. It is time to integrate your light side and get whole. If you are only working with your light side, you can easily be pulled into fear, and then you are simply becoming archonic dinner. It is time to use all of our powers to get into balance, integrate the light, integrate the dark, bring ourselves to balance. This is the only way to disinfect ourselves. I have done lots of these processes on myself, and my clients and I have noticed that it's very easy to become reinfected. We need to perform a regular spiritual hygiene, same language I use. Spiritual hygiene routine to make sure that we are not reinfected. I take not only a light shower every morning, but I also encase myself in a dark light shell. This seems to work also while I'm around others who are fully infected. I am open to be reinfected, and I have to watch myself very carefully. Anyone having experiences with these parasites, do not hesitate to contact me. I am very eager to know more about other people's experiences so we all can better understand exactly what they are and how they operate. This now concludes this reading. I think it validated for me a lot of things that have happened in my own life. I think it validated for the audience a lot of things that have happened in your own life. I think that we're all on this journey to learn how to continue to protect ourselves and to rise above the fear of them. And I believe that is our human destiny. With that, thank you for listening. I'm glad this was done today. I want to thank my friend for sending this. And I think that this is going to be the beginning of more readings of quality PDFs. Hey, send me an email or send me a personal note if there's something that you've come across that you think can be of merit and value to others. Thank you for listening.